Hi, welcome back to part 2 of this ALM video series. So what I'm actually going to do in this video, before we get into actually setting up a pipeline and making use of the Power Platform build tools, is we'll go through the process of setting up the service connections from Azure DevOps to a respective Power Platform environment ahead of when we get to the bit where it will want us to choose a service connection within one of our pipeline Power Platform build tool tasks. So there's two ways you can do this. You may prefer to do this as purely a username and password option, but if you do that, it won't support multi-factor authentication. However, the preferred method is to do it by way of a service principal, and which effectively will be an Azure App Registration. You then create an application user on the Power Platform side and do it that way. So just to kind of do a walkthrough of how you should really be going about this, that's where we're going to start now. So the first action is we're going to come to portal.azure.com and we're going to create an app registration. So once within the Azure portal, we're going to want to click on app registrations. If you don't see it here, just start to type it in the search bar at the top and you can find it that way. So now we're here, I'm going to create a new registration and I'm going to call this Power Platform Service. I'm going to leave these as the defaults and then I'm going to click register. Next, we're going to want to select API permissions on the left and we're going to want to add a permission. It's going to be under one of two names for this permissions actually. So we're going to go with Dynamic CRM, and basically we get into the common data service or Dataverse these days, user impersonation and of the delegated type. Add permission, and then we're going to want to grant admin consent. Click yes, and now that's granted. We're now going to select the certificates and secrets, but I'm just going to pause up here whilst I create the secret. The key here is that you're basically specifying a description. The expiration, I would get into the habit of having it as short as possible. So here the recommend is on the 6 months, just because you don't really want to have these permanently in existence. So you want to kind of back this up with some process to refresh periodically and update it wherever it needs to be. And then it will give you basically the secret. It will show it initially for you to copy it one time, but if you come back in here subsequently, you won't have the ability to see and copy it again. But having said that, there's nothing to stop you from creating another one. And what you really should do, just to complete this off in an ideal world, is you would store that secret within an Azure Key Vault and access it by way of the Key Vault. So whilst I create this, I'm just going to pause up the video. Okay, now we've got our secret value copied. We're going to click on Overview in the top left, and we're going to make a note of application ID, directory ID, but you could get that from the Azure Active Directory area. It's basically that ID. And I'm possibly going to take object ID. It's worth noting that Microsoft do have a script that will complete this for the most part. Obviously, you need to fill in your environment specific and app registration specific blanks. But for the sake of this demo, I just wanted to run through what that script would actually be doing, because it's always nice to know ultimately what you're doing. but just in case you didn't want to go through all of this, that is an option. Next, we're going to create an application user to tie to the Azure AD App Registration that we've just done. Just to call out, you can only bind an application user to a single app registration. So first off, we're going to start in environments. We're going to select our development environment. We're then going to click on settings across the top. Once within settings, we're going to expand users and permissions, and we're going to select application users. We're then going to click on set up app user, add an app. We're going to select the app registration that we just created for this purpose. Click add. We're then going to select the one and only business unit we've got. And then under security roles, it probably would be best practice to create a custom security role for this purpose. And even better, have that security role within your solution so it becomes available when you move it throughout other environments. But we essentially want to give it the system administrator role, so quite highly privileged. So I suppose if you knew categorically this pipeline was only going to carry out certain actions, arguably you might want to try and create a custom one. But this will certainly be the path of least resistance. We'll then click create. It will be activated by default. So if you ever want to edit the security roles or deactivate it, you can do so in here. Next, we're going to want to make a note of our app ID, but we did do that earlier on. And now we're going to want to come back over to Azure DevOps. So we're going to go to dev.azure.com. Within here, we're going to select the new project that we created. In the bottom left, we're going to come down to the gear icon. And under pipelines, we're going to select service connections, create service connection. Then in the service connection type, we're going to search for Power Platform. And with the Power Platform option type selected, we'll click Next. So for tenant URL, we'll want to come back into the Power Platform Admin Center, which we can easily do by going to aka.ms/ppack. Once within the Power Platform Admin Center, we'll click on Environments on the left. Once the environments have loaded, we'll select the environment in question. And then once this is loaded, we're going to take the environment URL. Let's pop that in for our server URL. Tenant ID, which we grabbed earlier. So I'm just going to pause up while I enter these details, in particular the client secret. We'll then give the service connection a name, so just for consistency, call it the same as where I have everywhere else. And then we're going to click on Save. And we now have our service connection. Now it stands to reason that that application user that's bound to the Azure App Registration, that's got the necessary API permissions. You're going to need to do that in all other environments involved in the pipeline. But I think what I want to do for the sake of the video is we'll kind of watch it fail, if you will, and then we'll mop up what we need to. So in the next video, we'll get into doing a pipeline, I promise. Thanks for watching.